is we're going to learn how to simplify these radicals, okay? So there's two ways to do it. You can do it with a multiplication rule, okay? Or you can do it with what's called a factor tree. So we're going to talk about both today. Okay, you guys have your calculators out? No. Okay, well, then share with a neighbor. What's the square root of 25? 5, okay. So if I was going to simplify this, I'd have 5, and then what's the square root of 9? Okay, so do you guys agree that this is going to simplify to be 15? Yes. Okay, good. Now, what is 25 times 9? 225. So this square root of 25 times 9 is the same as the square root of 225. Well, type that into your calculator and tell me what the square root of 225 is. 15, okay? So basically what I'm trying to show you here is that if it's this, like the same type of radical, then I can split that radical up over multiplication. Because 5 times 3 is the same thing as the square root of 225. So here's our rule. The square root of A times the square root of B is the same thing as the square root of A times B. We talked about this actually a little bit the other day when we did imaginary numbers. Remember how I could take the square root of -1 out of the radical? Right? How are we doing? Okay? Okay, so using this, we're going to simplify the square root of 8. Well, let me ask you this. Is the square root of 8 a perfect square? Meaning, is its answer going to be a whole number? No, you can type it into your calculator and you can see. Right? You're going to get a decimal that goes on forever, right? You see when you guys typed it in, right? But I can simplify it. Now, when I say simplify, think of it like reduce. Like, you know how we reduce a fraction? If I had 5 over 10, I could reduce that fraction. I have to reduce and take all the perfect squares out of the square root of 8. Can anyone think of a factor of 8 that is a perfect square? 4. Good. So if I take this square root of 8 and I use this rule, I can simplify it to be square root of 4 times the square root of 2. Because 4 is a factor of 8 and 4 times 2 is 8. Everybody good? Okay. Now, this one is irrational. The square root of 2 is irrational. That's not going to simplify anymore. But the square root of 4 is a perfect square. What is the square root of 4? 2. So 2 times the square root of 2 is the reduced radical of the square root of 8.
Wait, can you say that? Yeah.
Sure. So the square root of 8, I found the factor of 8 that was a perfect square. So I split that. I was 4. So 4 times 2 is 8, right? So I split the square root of 8 up into the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. And then I simplified my perfect square. So 2 times square root of 2. Okay. Yeah, Gavin.
I remember learning this one thing in like 8th grade when you're doing stuff like this, where inside the radical you would just do the 4 times 2 or like 2 times 2 times 2. Then you would take out 2 of the same and put on the outside.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that way next, a factor tree. So I'm showing you 2 ways so you guys can do whichever way you like the best. So what you're explaining, Gavin, is perfect. It's our next thing that we're going to learn. Okay, awesome. Okay, let's do one more this way, and then we'll do the way Gavin just brought up. Okay, so let's try the square root of, how about 40? No, let's do 90. 90. Square root of 90, okay? Okay, can you guys think of a perfect square that is a factor of 90? 10 is a perfect square. The square root of 10 is a perfect number? No, try again. 9. The square root of 9 is a perfect number, so I can split this into the square root of 9 times the square root of 10. So 3 square root 10. Because 3 times 3 is 9.
Oh, wait, okay, wait, I see what you did, okay.
Okay, let's stop here. Are there any questions before we move on to the other way to simplify these, which is factor trees?